Hello.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, Jesse, how you doing today?
I'm fine. Are you?
Good, good.
Good.
It's
Good.
Friday, so I'm very happy today.
That's good. That's okay. That's nice to see your face again.
Oh, good to see you too. You look
Yeah.
very summery. Is the weather nice there today?
Oh, you don't bank on the London weather at all. It's really cold now. It's really cold. We're supposed to be,
Really?
yeah, but it's still cold. It's five
No, I
degrees.
remember I remember it being very cold and wet. That's basically what I remember from London weather.
Honestly, but it's still, even in London. If you go up north to Scotland, you don't want to go to Aberdeen, wet, windy, and cold. So
Yeah.
we take what we get. We take what we get. We are grateful.
Awesome. Well, we don't have to, we can skip over the preliminaries and just jump right into it. So, is there anything particular that you wanted to talk about or
I,
um,
Basically, last time we talked, we spoke about I was coming from the angle of liminality
yeah.
to approaching research, to approaching innovation, strategic foresight. And
Yeah.
what we said is that liminality is basically a threshold period where we are in between, when we are in transition and when we are in transformation. And we talked about how that was seen in the tribal societies, where people are taken into the forest when they come to the right of age, where they leave their families, and go into a place that is uncertain. So we also notice this in wider society. We see that the pace of technology and societal change as they're happening, we are being plunged into more and more liminality. For
Yeah.
instance, COVID
Mhm.
is basically a kind of a liminal phase, because we were plunged into this, pandemic. We Everything is happening at the same time across systems, across structures. And we don't exactly know if we are going to go back to where we are. We're not exactly where we're going, which is the future, and we're not where we were before. So we are in this liminal phase, liminal stage, where it is confusing, it is filled with terror, it's filled with fear, but also, most importantly for us, for people like you and I, it is a fantastic opportunity for innovation, for new thinking, new ideas on how to face the future. And it presents us with a black canvas, to actually reimagine, what entry into the future we're talking about is going to be. So I want to today look at how we can expand on that, right?
Mhm.
And to understand that in the quest for changing anything, we need to have an understanding of what we're trying to change, when to intervene, how to intervene, and how not to intervene. And research, comes from that. The company that I work for, we do research for innovation. So research actually helps you to understand what exactly is going on, how should you intervene? What does the client wants to know? And for us, research does not have to be something that is massive, carefully planned. Research also could be as little as on your social media pages, all your feedback, loops or mechanism. People are always saying things. These are spaces that you don't pay a lot of attention to.
Yeah.
And also,
Well, signals come from everywhere, right? They don't
yeah,
necessarily need to be deep research. It just could be somebody tweeting something or somebody important doing this, or there's so
yeah.
many ways signals could arrive on your doorstep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it could be. We talk about intelligences, and funny thing is that I've been listening to a lot of your extra, the extra thing that you do, and
Hmm.
you're talking about how creativity requires constraints. For me, that is is really gelling with me on a lot of levels,
Yeah.
because. Um, of course, if you look at whether you subscribe to the Big Bang Theory, which is science, or you subscribe to creationist, view of things, we knew that at the beginning things were not. It was a liminal, space in the beginning, and
Yeah.
nothing was quite figured out. There was a Big Bang and things happened. So when we see the way molecular structure works, from one atom, and it splits into 2 and 3, and then it starts from simplicity to complexity and things happening, that way.
But you see, now you're making me think it's almost chaos versus order, though. Is chaos versus order part of this structure?
Yeah, chaos is a major part of what goes on, and that's why research is really, really key and important, because you cannot say, oh, somebody once said, I think it was a philosopher, a Greek philosopher, I can't remember the name now. It says,
us Greek philosophers, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it says that you don't step into the river twice, right?
Yeah.
What it means is that when the conditions, the atmospheric, the physical, the conditions that you step into the river the first time might be similar, but is actually different from the second time. And not only in terms of what you see, the platform that you have before you, but what is happening within yourself.
Yeah.
So now if you look at, we are in the pandemic now, a lot of organizations have not figured themselves out yet, but they are trying to also at the same time figure out who their targets are, in what ways have they changed, and what is that is just another pool. Then you're looking at the wider environment and you're saying, oh, what is going to happen with geopolitics, as we're saying now? What is going to happen with climate change, as it's going now? What is going to happen to government, regulations as it concerns?
It's almost, if you think about it, it's almost too complicated for any human being to comprehend. It's just so much data, and it's coming at you from all these different directions. How do you filter that? How can you make sense of it?
Yeah, it's it's understanding. Some of the things we say to people is, if you have a mindset, and navigating a liminal space, if anyone who goes into the study of liminality will understand there are certain characters that are called tricksters. So tricksters are provocateurs, and what provocateurs do, as you are inferring with what you said in Extra, innovation requires ignorance, about, oh, SMEs can do this, they can do that, blah, blah, blah. What they do is that they help you to cross boundaries. Yeah, they lived in different spaces. You find out that in the tribal figure, a shaman or a trickster, they'll go outside of the society, into the wilderness. While they're there, they're looking at different things as they're happening. And when they come back into the tribal group, they're able to impact new knowledge, and new things into them. So in terms of filtering what is going on, sometimes you need to kind of like look at yourself and take yourself apart. Who are we? Who am I? What I was yesterday is not what I am at the moment. Yeah. How have I changed personally? How as the outside, influences, change me? So you need to understand this. If you have capacity to do that, there are some companies that have internet capacities to do that kind of research. They can do it within, or you can ask other people to have a look at you. What are the areas in which we have, competency, and which areas do we have competency, and that competency is slipping away? So people can look at that. Also, there are 3 distinct areas that I shared the last time that we met about intelligence and how to, go for this intelligence. So in filtering, 3 areas, institutional or collective intelligence. There are a lot of companies right now, this was about figuring yourself out. They don't understand who they are. So who are we, our culture, the way we do things, our focus on the future, our focus on the now. Do we have that, as an understanding that everybody within the company shares? If you understand that, you find out that a lot of the companies that are doing well during the pandemic are the ones that have shared values. They understand what the company stands for, and they understand their roles within that. So that is called the institutional collective intelligence. Now, there's this collaborative intelligence, that we have. So it's like a lot of the things that you've been sharing, You've been connecting with other kind of tricksters or other professionals, other thinkers within that community, within innovation, within research, within all the affiliated industries. You see, this sort of sometimes you can get that through going to a conference, you can get that through going for a workshop, taking a step back. All of this is not being taken seriously and being filtered for wisdom and knowledge, that you can, as a takeaway to what we can do next. Because listening to some of the stuff that you said and listening to some of the guys you have interviewed, I'm comparing where we are and where I am personally with what is going on with other thinkers, across the world. So that's some form of intelligence in which you can filter and say, okay, this is where we are at the moment. This is a competitive view of the old landscape. Where will we be? What are our shortcomings? Where is our areas of opportunities? Where are the barriers, that is going to militate against us getting to where we want to get to? And the last one is what I said the last time about ongoing personal intelligence. A lot of the time, okay, there's this idea about interdisciplinarity of teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's gained, it's gained a lot of traction over the last 3, 4, 5 years. It is good in the sense that at Studio intO, we have people from different fields. I'm from advertising and branding, and I verged into innovation management. Now I'm doing research for innovation. I've got people who are into service design, people who are into arts, and people who are into all sort of things, basically knowledge. What that does for you is that each one of us is bringing an ongoing personal intelligence into that organization, to the table. Now, as an organization, how do you filter this? How do you filter this? And I gave an example of a company called Arup Foresight. This is what they do. So they've got this social media type of an intraweb, right? So the ongoing personal experience of each of their staff is captured there. So if something is going on around the world, if I've read something from you, or if you have interviewed somebody that's saying something that I want to know about more, I put it up there to say, oh, we're looking at this environment. This is what the thinkers are saying in this environment. This is what my own personal experience are. So this is how you filter some of these things, into actionable insights, that you can take forward as an organization.
So these people you're talking about, so let's work backwards. I'll start with the latest thing that you just said. So are these people, is one of the reasons why they're exposed to all these different things is that they're geographically based elsewhere, so they're globally distributed? Is that one of the reasons why they're exposed to these things?
Yeah. You don't necessarily have, you can, if you have people like Studio intO have in different countries of the world, yeah, that allows our clients to understand what is going on locally. The vibes there locally are totally different from when you're talking from a political point of view. So you get that. But even if you're within the same environment, where the ongoing personal intelligence comes in is, a lot of the staff, let's say the small and medium enterprises, yeah, a lot of the people that you're getting on board, they have certain things that they are experts in outside of the work that you're doing for you. And there is sometimes a lot of connection between what their intelligence capability is and what they can bring to your ideation process or to your thinking process or to the group intelligence, programs. So we don't do this a lot of the time. So for instance, I consulted for a small advertising agency in Nigeria, in Lagos, Nigeria. And they asked me, how can we filter these things through? So I helped them to set up every month for them to have a brainstorming session, internal one, in which everyone is going to say, okay, this is what I've been doing. If I've been in the studio making music, if I've been out there doing something else, look at these experiences. Look at what is going on in all of these spaces. What do you think where do you think your company might have some kind of role to play? What do you think you might offer these people? Or what do you think is going on there that you might link back to some of the clients on your list, on your payroll? So for me, it is one way. And what they started to do then is that they started to build up little by little a tapestry of, different areas in which, they could already see things, going on. So this is some ways of, putting your foot out there. We talk about ambidexterities, about, okay, what you're doing currently now, how do you continue to exploit so that you can live, you can pay salaries, you can pay your bills and all of that. So if you're talking about changing systems, you cannot just change systems abruptly. So you need to do what you're doing at the moment.
But you can. It's just like ripping off the Band-Aid. But the problem is they don't stick, right? Everything starts going back to the way it was before.
Yeah. So while you're doing your exploitation, you must put one leg out there, for exploration. So exploration is what is key here. A lot of companies don't explore. They don't explore beyond the boundaries of what they know. And I thought that was what you were saying in one of your extras, what you were talking about. Oh, don't bring preconceived ideas, onto the table. It's going to kill what you know. Because a lot of people focus on what they know, and they are good experts at this. But sometimes the knowledge that we have can actually stand in the way of knowing what is happening, what's going to happen, in the future.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because if you're really deep, you have deep knowledge of an industry or a subject or whatever, you feel that you know everything there is to know about it, and you won't bring in new perspectives, which is why you want to bring in, if you want to bring in new perspectives, you want to brainstorm, you want to ideate, you really need people who don't know anything. It's like beginner's mind, right? Beginner's luck, beginner's mind. You bring fresh perspectives in that you would never have before.
Yeah, that's what I watched. I watched a couple of them, and bringing that mindset.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad somebody's watching them.
No, seriously. When you were talking about the guys who says do it now, and the guys say, oh wait, should we do it or should we not do it? For me, that's what I'm talking about. The collaborative intelligence basically is experts talking to experts. London is such a fantastic and wonderful place. So what I do personally, I like to look out for conferences, for talks, for things, for meetups. I've gone into several of these and I've come out with things I did not know. There are people who might not be taken seriously for what they do, but they're actually telling you what the future is about. So it's been part of my experience here as well, in the sense that you find when I came into this country, I will go to the store and I want to buy things that we eat, but I couldn't get them in the stores. So I'll go to this section of the stores, they will just lump Afro-Caribbean thing in there. And inquisitive mind, and say, this is not right. The culture, I know my culture. Somebody is not taking advantage of this culture. So it took a major economic setback of 2008, crash for the major companies to start to look, because then the profits were gone, one. And they started to pay attention to the ethnic markets, and they found out that the Black ethnic market in the UK was spending on groceries £350 million a year.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it was a shock to them, but it was not a shock to me.
Yeah.
Because our consumption patterns, actually follows our philosophies. So in the African philosophy, or especially Yoruba philosophy, they will say something like, it means that if you take hunger away from poverty, then you have halved, what poverty is. You're on the way to actually killing poverty. So you'll find out that when you get a paycheck, especially for people above 40 in the Black community, the first thing they'll do is to buy food in bulk. Because there is this psychological safety and insurance from knowing
Yeah.
that, okay, for the next 30 days, I'm not going to think about food for my family, for everyone. So if we run out of money, we're not going to go begging because we can we can eat. So
Yeah.
they did not realize that a lot of the bulk buying was being done by these communities. And the same thing has happened, so they started to pay attention when they needed to. So they moved us from what you call gray market, into the, known market. So the same thing happens with developers as well. So you will see everybody wants to go with the trend. They call it open plan kitchen, open plan, front room. There's a problem with that because in the ethnic community, the guys who buy houses are people from 40 upwards, because those are the guys who have worked and have some savings. And the way we cook, we use palm oil to cook. The same thing, what applies in the African market applies in the Southeast Asian market as well. So if you're making chicken tikka masala the proper Indian way, you don't want an open plan kitchen, because the oil in it is going to get onto the paint
The whole house.
Yeah.
It'll
So
just be everywhere.
you need a separate kitchen. But you see, a lot of the developers are Western centric. So they did not take into consideration to say, okay, if I'm building in this particular area, I'm building in Endon, I'm building in Acne, I'm building in Rumford, I'm building in ethnic dominated areas. Should I have, done a bit of research about what my potential, client base might be? So these are some of the what we can lose focus of not having interdisciplinary or diversified, workforce that can begin to pick up on these opportunities. And this is what we are also finding with geopolitics coming out of the pandemic. Now, the Chinese, they are on the rise. You see, the Chinese have a different cultural philosophy to the West. So this is already creating a lot of tensions, as we see. It used to be, when I came in here, I went to business school, and they were talking about how they had to retrain some of the English businessmen who were so focused on timing that they were losing a lot of businesses in India. Because in India, the culture is that the big man, the head honcho, would ideally, is a norm to come in late, 10 to 15 minutes to announce its importance. So to them, it is a normal thing to do, is a cultural way down in India. But to the average Brit who wants to go and do business there, it's a stickler for time. If you are not coming at 9 o'clock, like you said, so that is some kind of insult to me. So before the meeting already starts, there's bad blood flowing, everywhere in the room. And this is affecting people. So the Home Office had to commission some kind of research, and they were able to pass on that research to the business community to say, when you go for this big business meeting here, it's different. It's just like in the 70s when the West was trying to get to know the Japanese. Typically, a Westerner would just go straight to the point. But the Japanese, they have what you call belly talk.
Yeah.
Belly talk. And so they are going to just ask a few questions, how are you, just before they get to the point. And it's the same thing in Africa. I was working with Leo Bonnet in Lagos. We're doing a lot of research when we had Vodacom coming. So we work on that pitch. And they just found out that they were making a lot of money just from voice data. And they didn't know why, but we know why. Because in the African culture, as much as in Southeast Asian culture, you don't just call your dad and go, "Dad, hello, how are you? I need you to look there and get that something for me." You don't do that. It's disrespectful. So if I was going to call my dad in Africa, anywhere in Africa, you call your dad. First, you have to say, "How are you doing?" You have to ask about his health. Second, you have to ask about his wife, because he prizes his wife as important.
That's right. You got to get the status update on the whole family.
On the whole family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
by the time you've done that, you've already spent 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of money, you know, and that was the way you could make money. So a lot of these things is happening in different ways. So we are seeing, just like you said in one of your talks, you know, you can live anywhere now, you can do business anywhere. So you cannot say, one of the things I wanted to say here is that Deleuze says sameness is not the same as uniformity, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
look at snow, if you look at snow on the ground, it's just all white. That is uniformity. But if you start to now get your microscope and look at the character of each snowflake, you find out that the patterns are like 364 different types of patterns. So that is creativity. So if you say, because I'm coming into this, you know, market, or we've done things like this before, you don't, how did the snowflakes come about? It was just the angle at which they were caught in the tension between atmospheric forces, gravitational pull, yeah, and water and air. So that is what actually, you know, so you can see that the same systems, but things turns out differently. So this is what we say with research. You don't know when the sands are shifting. You don't know when your strength is actually becoming an impediment to your next level. You don't know any of this. So you need to be agile. You need to think about, who are we as a company? And a lot of the time, when you commission a research, what I've seen with a lot of people is that they say, oh, I want to discover why. I want to discover why. But they don't think like academic researchers. You know, in science research, you have what you call translational research, and you have what you call discovery research. So the discovery research is all about, you know, so okay, this is the epistemology of these things. Oh, we want to know why. This is why this is happening. So we get to know why, and they present that to you as information. So they build a whole body of knowledge around why. Now, in translational research, you're looking at, oh, guys, we know the body of knowledge around these things. So how can we take this knowledge to intervene and make an impact in the society? So that is what that's about. So when people commission research for innovation, for instance, so if you are a specialized, you know, research, you know, group like us, if you come, what I've noticed, this is personal, you know, notice, people just want to understand why. They don't go to the next step to say, okay, we have this. How can we do the synthesis? How can we move on and make this something that has some kind of impact? You know, and what are the conditions that you know will play? So I let this from working as well. So as the more of the brief you answer, the more knowledge that, you know, comes to you as an expert as well. So I found out that in actually making an impact, there was a kind of a group within the academic setting. They call them PE. They call them public engagement, you know, team.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out that it's not just a PR, you know, aspect of that organization. It's actually the fulcrum of everything about making research to have an impact. So say you are trying to do social research, for instance, social impact research. If you get the public engagement team who understands all the stakeholder units around the universities, from the hospitals to the patient groups to people who might be interested in that research, if you bring all of them in, they're able to link you up from the beginning of your research, so that when you are forming your hypothesis, you are not forming it on the head knowledge, you are forming it on the basis of lived experience, you know, with this group. And you are able to extract things as you go along. And they are able to now say, look, this is your research. Before you even start to research, they say, okay, what is the impact you want to make? They're able to plot a way for you through to get in, you know, through there. So I take that, you know, as, okay, when companies just say, I need a research to intervene in this market. Okay, this is what's going on wrong for us, or this is what we want to get into. So you get the why. So what do you do next? That is left to you. So if you don't have that capacity within your own company, why don't you say to the organization that is doing the research for you, okay, what should we do with this? How should we intervene? Should we even intervene at all? Is our competition going to come from what you call your normal competitive, plane, or is it going to come from somewhere you don't even know entirely? And how should you, progress your steps? Some people want to, I take that from what you said about do it now and, oh, wait, don't do it. So you got to look at all the stuff in between that to say, how do we make impact? How do we progress? How do we, begin to unfold? So if you do it too quickly, sometimes you don't get the rewards that you should get. And if you do it later on, you wouldn't get it. So for me, I think a lot of companies should always, when they commission research or when they even do research for themselves, to say, how are we going to make impact with this piece of knowledge that we've got? And that is when synthesis is going to come through. And that synthesis actually is the holy grail.
Yeah, do they usually come, they don't usually come at you with that question, or it's not that broad based, right? It's more of a, here's a hypothesis we want you to prove, and then you have to come back to it and prove it, and then they decide what actions to take. Is that typically how it works?
Normally, people want to commission the research to say, oh, can you help us to understand why this and that is happening? Sometimes it's tied to business, business goal. Sometimes it's tied to future actions that they need to take, but a lot of the time, they have an idea of what they want. So if what we do is we ask our clients, what will be an idea of success with this project? And that is interesting because they come to you with the ideas of what they want to achieve. And you find that the way they judge your work is going to be based on that. It's good. I'm not knocking it whatsoever, because they have a lot of capacity and capability, and they feel they want to address that issue. But like, when you are talking about creativity happens with restrictions, right? While you're doing some work, you might discover certain things that's going to impact the work that they are doing. But if you, as a research company, have your remit, and your remit is already in white and black, you have very little wiggle room to say, okay, we've delivered this. Do you know what? This is what we are seeing. This is what we think, because we have worked on this and that and that. So we just want to say to you, keep an eye on this particular area, of work, or of the aspect of what you do. But a lot of the times, now we just want this. But there are some other clients that will say to you, please, we need you to give us 1, 2, 3 ways in which we might progress this in different directions. Yeah.
So do you find that a lot of companies, you think there's more companies that are looking into sort of foresight research than there were before? Because I have a feeling that there's this huge surge now, especially with all the uncertainty coming, is that people are now really interested in mapping out the future more. Are you seeing an increase in people coming to you and asking for more work?
Yeah, with the pandemic, things slowed down a bit, but it's beginning to pick up again. But I can tell you that on the strength of the briefs that you get, there is, but how that is framed is totally different, because that's why I'm particular about the understanding of the liminal space. It's about transitions and transformations. So a lot of people
see, the interesting that you mentioned that, because transition and transformation, sound like you're actually going through a process and then you're coming out the other side. Or, but we know that you may not be going, may not be coming out through the other side. And in fact, even in the classical description where you say, you go into the forest and then you come back, you go into the forest a boy and you come back a man, you may not
Yeah,
come back at all. So what happens when you don't come back?
yeah. So for me, I think that is the key thing that uh, they don't get to frame it, because why? The framing of problems in most of the companies is from a problem perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, our revenue is going down. We need more revenue. So what do we do? Without understanding how people think or how they want to live. Um, okay, look at what has happened in the housing sector, for instance. In the major cities, I've read a report like that, but I know what's going on in London. With the pandemic, people are now beginning to see that, okay, you could actually do some remote work. And yeah, you don't need, some of the jobs don't actually need you to come into the office at all. So we understand that. But what are the impacts, of those kind of realities? Now we're saying that because people now said, okay, oh, I don't want that kind anymore. I don't want that kind of life anymore. They are moving into the suburbs. So the house prices in the major cities kind of like, taking a hit, but it's going up in the suburbs, because people are now saying, okay, I want more rooms. My one bed flat in London can actually buy me a whole mansion somewhere up north.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to be spending all my time at home in front of my computer anyway, may as
Yeah,
well live somewhere nice, right?
yeah. So, so if you have made your projections based on the old London or pre-pandemic, fundamentals, how do you react to what's going on? So a lot of these things are going to be some sort of trying to understand what is going on and what's going to go on a long time. It's just like the governments around the world now are saying, oh, we already know about the pandemic, we know about COVID, we know about the vaccines, but we want to know about the long-term COVID.
Yeah.
What impact does it have long-term? I think that is the perspective. That long-term perspective is what is lacking in private companies because of the shareholder, thing. And I see that going forward, a lot of companies will need to kind of like have that kind of mindset to say, okay, we have these fundamentals coming into the pandemic, but post-pandemic things have changed. We need to understand the people. We need to understand them properly, not the way. I love innovation and I love the use of technology and advancements and all, but we make certain mistakes with them. We have not gotten to the point where computers will think like human. We've
Not
not
yet.
we've not gotten to the point where computers have empathy. So we need to understand, some of the things that we use, some of the tools we use. Sometimes we say, oh, let's do a persona. Okay, we build up a persona. So that gives us an insight into what the character of these people might be or what that target might be. So what we feed into the computer, basically, a single mom lives in a flat, blah, blah, blah. There's crime in that area. But we don't understand the human factors behind that. We don't understand that it's poverty. We don't understand its deprivation. We don't understand it from that point. So a lot of the time we respond with law and enforcement solutions rather than going in with social innovation solutions. And so
You know what we need there? We need somebody to be able to program a VR simulation of what it's like to live like that, and then have somebody else live in somebody else's shoes. Because I think you can. I mean, that's power. That's a much powerful message. It's like a storytelling, like internalized storytelling.
I think that's why my own version of design thinking or whatever I used to, we have a lot of labels, human intelligence or human thinking, or whatever it is we call it. I would not go into designing a solution as much as possible before the way we use subject expert matters, because I listened to what you were saying about not bringing in subject matter experts to confuse, what might be something that needs a fresh pair of eyes, to see. What we do basically is that we use subject matter experts to understand the landscape, because sometimes it could be really complex and with a lot of, different sides to it. So we use them as experts. So we know what we want to use them for before we go out there into the space to do the research. So that kind of like helps us a lot. But what I'm saying is that as much as possible, you don't want to, innovation is going to come from the human aspect. For instance, there is the design of new keyboards with a designer who was working with MS sufferer, somebody who was suffering from multiple sclerosis. For me, that is a proper design. So a lot of the time we say, oh, empathy, empathy. No, you cannot actually, until we know that we have limitations. As a researcher, I have biases and I have limitations. So I will not trust a computer or trust myself. I will actually trust the person I'm designing for, to be part of that whole design process. So we create cities without thinking about the disabled until we are disabled ourselves. Then that's when we start to say, oh, wait a minute, it should have been done this way. But if we had brought in disabled people as experts, yeah, they may not have qualifications, but in helping us to see from the eyes of a disabled person, they are subject matter experts in that,
Well, yeah,
category.
because you need that perspective. If you don't have them in there, you're not going to get the perspective, and you're not just going to get it from them by doing a survey. You need to actually have them experience what you're trying to do.
So a lot of what we call experience design, they just bring in a token, or they don't even bring people in at all. So that's why I do believe that going forward, in terms of getting the maximum benefit out of the research that you've done, basically, is to make sure that you get the fundamentals right. Who are you designing for? What is the total makeup of your city? Does that include all the diversity of of people? You just don't want to rate things by the normal codes that we already have. Sometimes when I have a brief to do, I said this is a way to do it. So just like Deleuze will ask in his work and say, what is this discourse not saying? So I say, okay, I've got all the professional things, I've written them down. What is hidden to all of us that we need to explore? Because that might be where the solutions, might come from, and you might be able to define the problem in a better way, and you might be able to offer insights to the client and say, okay, all of these things that are coming through to us, this is what they're saying. And yeah, we understand what they're saying. Then you take it back to the wider environment in play. If we take all of these, things that is being said to us and we put it in play, how does that work out, in that complex environment? Are we going to get a realistic view of things or not? So, so one of the things that Joanna actually, designed is to look at things in detail and in context. So we look at things both ways. So every brief that we get at intO, you look at it in context and in detail first. Okay, this is a core thing the clients want to achieve. These are the tools, to achieve them. Okay, we understand that. We understand what the clients want. We understand our role. We understand what we need to do. We understand all the basics. Now, in context, how does it work in the wider society? How does it work in the wider, context of things? Because if you don't do that, that's why you end up with technology actually being, they say, oh, social media is this, social media is that. But I do feel social media is now like a prison. There's no...
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So we see this at all time that look at the formation of the internet. It was some kind of activist in the 70s who said, look, we don't like the way information is being controlled top down. We're going to do something that is peer-to-peer, that way. They come
And
up
we're
with
back to
it,
top down again, though. I mean,
and we're back.
this experience, they
Yeah.
only experience the internet through certain sites, right? I mean, if they don't use Google, who doesn't use Google? Most people do.
And now I'm trying not to use Google
Yeah, me
because
too.
I believe in the future. Personal beliefs basically is that we're going to, when you listen to, I love the American legislative, chambers when they get into this heated
Oh my
exchange.
God, that circus.
It's not a circus because in everything, as a researcher and as a foresight, person, you have to look for some key ingredients. There's nothing that goes to waste. You have to look at it. So when somebody, these senators will say, I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my time. So
Yeah.
when you take that as some kind of analogy, into another context, you find out that a lot of it's things that people are trying to do basically is that they're trying to reclaim their time back from companies, from government, so
Yep.
look at
Because that is the most valuable thing.
yeah,
People have forgotten that.
look at the protests that are going on all over the world now. We have kind of like evolved. It's a liminal space for governments because before the governments could control the media and everything is okay. But now we have social media, we have text messages, we have all sort of communication tools, with us. So they don't know how to react to that. They don't know how to develop the adaptive mindset to cope
They
with
don't
all of
like it. They don't like it because they're all about control. I mean, that's the thing with the state, right?
Sometimes we cannot just say they don't like it. Some of them don't understand it. And whatever we don't understand, we hate. So for me, there's a way to control things. You can control virtually everything, but probably not in your own way, but you can exert some kind of, so there are two ways to do control. You can do control by influence, or you can do control by violence. And you find out that the people who have done control by influence, they have actually withstood the test of time than the people who have done control by affluence. And that is what you look at America. When we were growing up all over the world, Hollywood was some mighty influential, too. And we loved America because of that. America was not the colonizer of Nigeria, for instance, but you find out that a lot of our culture was influenced by things we watch via Hollywood, by hip hop music, and all of that.
Yep.
Rather than the UK, because they have this soft power. Now it's now becoming violence because they don't understand that people want something different. They want privacy. It's a complex environment. And what strategy foresight people or anybody who is conducting research for innovation for companies, for commercial purposes, needs to understand that with complex environments, you are not in control of anything. So what is your most critical asset is to have an adaptive mindset to roll with whatever comes. And as we said before, Taleb actually said that. He said, look, the opposite of fragility is not anti-fragility, is not robustness. It is the ability to say, okay, whatever comes, I'm able to roll with it and see where it goes. And then we create a new model because change is the most constant thing you ever get.
Oh yeah, it's always resilience, right? I mean, it's to be able to handle what comes your way because you have no idea what's going to come your way next. And I think a lot of people they think they can figure it out. They think, oh yeah, this is exactly the way things are going because they look at a certain set of signals and they apply their biases and they go, this is the way things are. And then they plan for those things. And then when things go wrong, they're like, oh my God, I didn't plan for this. And it's like, of course you can't plan for it. That's the way life works.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what, if let's take the Facebook example, for instance. Back in the days when they were just Facebook, where you could just reach out, it's a communication tool, no problem with anybody whatsoever. The moment they moved into complexity to say, oh, we are going to be a media, organization as well. All the things all the constrictions, all the stuff you were talking about barriers, the barriers that the press is, look at the whole evolutionary progress of the press, how they have been regulated, how to find their levels, do all of that. That is what the press, the print press, the radio stations, TV stations, that was what they were operating under. But you say you are a new media and then you come up to be a media company, the same set of of restrictions are going to come your way. So now Facebook failed on a simple, for me, the way I see it, that's where I see it. It failed on not performing a simple personal analysis, because the P in person is for politics. And politics, it tops everything, because what they don't understand, governments most of the time, what they don't understand is shutdown. It's ban, 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 ban. Two, if they believe that if I'm the normal people, the all vast majority of users of Facebook, services, if we believe that Facebook cannot control itself anymore, we are going to put pressure on our governments to actually rein them in. So they don't know how to deal with all of that. So they are caught in this. Today might be a racist, how do you take care of, racists using your platform? Tomorrow is freedom of speech. And now they're saying, no, don't talk about history, because the moment you put a picture of Hitler up or this one up, they shut you down without a recourse to. So basically what they're doing every day is they are creating a groundswell of anger against tech companies. And not only that, when you make your phone to complain, to any organizations, that they're going to put you through different hoops. Oh, number one, do this. Number two, do that. Number three, do. Number four, you listen to all of that. And then at the end of the day, they play some kind of wacky music in your ears. And people are not taking this feedback to say, how can we re-engineer these processes to actually be human again, to be...
well, I thought, those are purposely like that to try and get you off the phone, right?
Yeah. But the way we see it, you and I, the way we see it is that in the long run, the guys who engineered that on purpose are actually doing a great disservice to their own brands, because
absolutely,
people are going to turn against those brands in the future. It might be 50 years from now, it might be 20 years from now. So when things do go down, people tend to look at the immediate cause. No, a lot of the time you don't find that it is the immediate cause that led to that. That is just the final nail. But you look at the remote cause over a period of time. So that was what happened to Nokia. Nokia had 1 billion people using their phones. They knew what was going on within the industry. They knew that smartphones are the next level of things. They dabble into that. They put some money behind that. But they said, no, a lot of people, and they just had this fixation that normal people are not going to be able to afford smartphones. And that was it. By the time all that technologies have evolved, they couldn't catch up anymore.
Yep.
They just lost it. So what you're doing today, so this is one of the things that we help people to understand. So what are the things that you are doing now? How are you conducting yourself in the wider space that is going to create some kind of problems down the river? So if you don't understand that, what you're doing upriver will have some consequences, downriver. And this is what the people I call the shamans, like yourself, the tricksters of this world. When you put out some of this information, people don't listen, because why? They are busy exploiting. They are not exploring the possibilities of what can happen in the future. And this is why there needs to be a lot more people who are using research, for innovation, who are beginning to say, we need to get this. So that for intO, we don't do, if we have to do, we do qualitative research, yeah, because we believe that there are many truths, yeah, to every issue. But if we want to do quantitative, and we know that we need to use this tool, we actually go to experts within that field, as a layer on to what we're doing. But basically, this is, as you're talking to me, I talk to quite a lot of people this way, trying to get insights, what they're doing and all of that. For me, we're trying to get the insight from these people. We're trying to understand the context. we're trying to go beyond just details, details of everything. I've done a questionnaire, just click, 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 click. Now, I want to speak to you. I want to understand what's going on, with your thinking, your mindset. That's where you discover things that have not been said. That's where you discover the truths that you can bring to the table to challenge the dominant thinking within every organization, to say, look, this is what these people are saying. This is a fact that's coming through. And if you look at historicity, you look at what's going on in the future, look at all the technologies that are now converging. Where do you think you might be? So we did something for a company before. I don't know if I mentioned it the last time. So they were thinking that it's an energy company. So they were thinking that their normal competitors are going to be other energy companies. But it wasn't so. So this has to do, it was a strategic foresight work. So it wasn't with intO, but that's a strategic foresight work. What we discovered was, by just mapping the total environment, in which this energy provider was playing in, you're able to discover what you call emergent technologies. So the concept of emergence is what you and I, is our holy grail. That's what we struggle to get to see, to lay our hands on. What is emerging out there from all of this, liminality? What is coming through that we need? What's the next thing? So we found out that this kinetic, technology, where you can harvest energy from human activities, was going to be the main thing. And we start to see different sources of competition. So one of the sources of competition was electric cars. It was then we started to talk to SMEs. Then we started to understand that the end result of driving an electric car is actually to produce more energy. So you're able to transpose that onto companies like Uber. So in the future, when you have self-driving cars, and all Uber needs to do is to just say, okay, we have about 1 million self-driving cars across the cities. And as they are picking people up and down, they just need to keep moving because they're not polluting the environment. They just need to keep moving. As I say, moving, they're generating electricity that goes into a smart grid. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I have a question. We don't have much time left, but I just want to ask something about what you said a little bit earlier. It's okay. You're absolutely right about the exploitation versus exploration thing. But how do you convince companies to do more exploration? Because that's what they really need to do. I mean, they're stuck in this exploitation mode and they can't really grow beyond a certain point, but they don't see that. How do you convince them to be more explorative?
Honestly, it's difficult. As you know, you're probably more experienced than I am in this field. But what I've noticed, one key thing that in the areas in which we have had some kind of breakthroughs is when you are doing your work on the client side, it's always very good to play some kind of detective roles before you start a project. So you need to look at the worldview, experiences of people you're working for, map them out and see somebody who, if you find there's somebody who is futuristic, who thinks like a trickster, who is like a shaman, who is willing to be a provocateur, who is willing to try new things, you have to find a way to latch onto that person. Because why? The totality of the work that you're going to do, to show them what the future is. Of course, you have to do your own work to say, this is what we have found out. Look at, this is what is going on. If you excite that person and you're able to win that person over to yourself, then you stand a very good chance. And that's why I say emotions, still trumps rationality when you are trying to get people to buy into this sort of work. And if you see societies and governments that have been able to do fantastic things, who don't have this authoritarian, background, they are the ones who have been able to actually trick their people into saying, look, this is a vision of the future. What we can do is open up a little window to just say, look what is possible. That's our job. We can't
get them excited about it. Get them excited about it.
And get them excited and give them the initiative and the agency, the power of agency to carry it through, and then they can always come back to you, and then you give them more tools. They come back to you, give them more tools.
I love it.
That's the bit we can do.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but we're at time. Thank you so much. This has been great. We obviously have to do this again because there's so much more to talk about. But if somebody wants to get, I'll put your contact information in the show notes. So if somebody wants to get, they'll go directly to you. And I'll see you next time. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Always nice talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Next weekend.